This segment, excited to go to the Stanley Fencing and Gates hotline to say hello to Ben McKee, GoVols247.com. Ben, thank you for taking time to join us as always. We were just talking about some past frustrating weeks, Monday conversation after games. What have you seen this week? How's Big Orange Nation doing after Tennessee's win against Florida?
Well, my initial reaction when you mentioned that is that it's not fair that I had to suffer with Swain for 7 years of the end of the Butch Jones era and the Jeremy Pruitt era, and then even some tough games last year. Well, last year's Florida reaction was much different than this year's Florida reaction. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is that I didn't get the happy side of beating Florida this year. But no, it's been a great reaction, and what better advertisement for the city of Knoxville and East Tennessee and the University of Tennessee and the Tennessee football program than this past weekend. It was on Front Street across the college football landscape alongside Aaron Judge, and hard not to appreciate that.
What play or plays or drive stood out to you in the Tennessee-Florida game?
Yeah, there were two plays that I think were the difference in the game, and the obvious one is the 99-yard scoring drive and the Ramel Keaton catch. A guy, Swain, that you and I both were not the highest on in years past, but I thought he showed a lot of courage yesterday speaking to the media and admitting that he wasn't working as hard as he could have been. So how could he be upset with his current situation when he's the one not putting in as much work as he needs to be putting in? I thought that was very telling, and I really commend him for that. And he's looked like a different receiver this year. Hasn't had a ton of targets, but when he's been targeted, he's made plays. And what bigger play to make than a diving 43-yard grab to help swing the momentum in Tennessee's favor. And that was one of several key plays on that drive. You had Jabari Small rush for 9 yards to give yourself a little cushion back towards the goal line. Hendon Hooker sidesteps the blitz right up the middle and puts it on Princeton Fant to where only Princeton Fant could catch it for a first down, and that was a 3rd and 10 play, and then that set up the Ramel Keaton catch. So several plays on that 99-yard scoring drive, and you score to take the lead going into half, but also you score coming out of the half. So that's a 14-point swing right there. And then the other play for me is the Omari Thomas forced fumble, and that's because Tennessee and Florida are swapping scores throughout the third quarter, and it was kind of, okay, which defense is going to step up and make a play? And I know the defense wasn't always pretty on Saturday, but that to me was a big turning point because Florida was already trying to match Tennessee's score for score, and at that point, Florida had to catch up even more so because Tennessee was able to go down and score after the Omari Thomas fumble and make it a 17-point game.
Ben McKee is with us, GoVols247.com. And, Ben, you mentioned there a few minutes ago kind of an advertisement for Tennessee football with everything that was going on leading up to the game, the showing itself. Josh Heupel, what he said after the game, part of that's a message to players they're hoping to have in the future, right? Recruits. What did you think about the showing, how it could potentially benefit Tennessee in the future?
Yeah, the recruiting weekend could not have gone any better. I don't know that they're going to have any immediate results from that weekend, from the weekend. A lot of 2024 and 2025 kids were in attendance for the weekend, and you couldn't have a better representation for a lot of kids. It's first time on campus. I've spoke to several recruits this week who made the trip for the first time, and not even just football recruits, but basketball recruits as well. First trip to Neyland Stadium and for the game day environment, and they were just absolutely blown away. And you're starting to see a difference in the caliber of recruit that Tennessee is able to go after from the 2022 class, 2023 class, to that 2024-25 class. Several five-stars were in attendance, and Tennessee left a huge impression on them. And the 2023 class is mostly done. Obviously, it's not 100% done, and there's still going to be attrition there, and they're still pursuing guys at key positions. So that's why I say you're not going to see any direct results in the near future. But over time, as they do finish out the 2023 class, I think that Florida weekend is going to loom large when you look back on it in hindsight, and also getting off to a great start in the 2024 and 2025 class as well. I think that was a good starting point. And they had already built up a ton of great relationships over the summer with those younger recruits, but getting them on campus for the first time and allowing them to see that is really going to go a long ways, in my opinion.
Ben McKee, GoVols247 here on Josh and Swain. Ben, you mentioned you talked to several recruits. What recruit or recruits do you feel like Tennessee made the biggest impression with?
Yeah, obviously the two official visitors that it had on campus. You need offensive line help. You can never have too many offensive linemen, and you had Vyson Lang, an offensive lineman from Alabama, on campus this weekend for his official visit, and he just spoke glowingly about Tennessee. And then also on the flip side of the trenches, along the defensive line, you had David Hobbs, a big-time defensive lineman that Tennessee would love to have from the state of North Carolina, and that's been a Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina battle. Seems like North Carolina's begun to fade since Alabama and Georgia entered the mix prominently. But Rodney Garner and what he's able to do, not only from a recruiting standpoint on a personal level, but the evidence that he can speak to with guys that are currently playing. I think there's no position on this roster more developed than Tennessee's defensive line. Maybe the receivers. Obviously, Hendon Hooker would like a say in that conversation as well. But you look across the defensive line, and there's some guys there that were just forgotten about on this roster, and they've turned into significant football players and significant contributors along that line. So for David Hobbs to be here and see that firsthand, I think that's going to go a long ways. And you're competing with the big boys there, Alabama and Georgia, but I think Tennessee is as well positioned as they could be.
Hey, Ben, not to the second half of the season yet, but 4 games in, a month in, is there a player that you could see on Tennessee's football team, either side of the ball, playing a bigger role as the season goes along, more opportunities, offense or defense? Anybody come to mind there?
Yeah, I look at the edge position, and I think Byron Young's having a really solid season, but maybe that group as a whole hasn't been completely consistent. I think you can find more consistency there, and I think a guy that can help provide that is the true freshman Joshua Josephs, who hasn't played a ton, but has played a good amount for a freshman so far, and when he's been thrown in there, he's been real close to coming up with a sack or even this past weekend, a safety in the end zone of Anthony Richardson. So he's a guy that first comes to mind, just really athletic, a lot of burst off the edge. And, again, I think Byron Young is playing really well, but you need more than one edge rusher in this league and in football in general. And I think he's a guy that as the season progresses and as he develops more and more, I think he's going to get more playing time, and I expect him to take advantage of it, even for a youngster.
Ben, are you ready for basketball season? I mean, are you able to kind of flip that switch? Because, hey, Tennessee's 4-0. First month of the season has not concluded, but, man, basketball's starting, and we know it's going to be exciting too.
Yeah, it's going to be a more interesting dynamic this season because in years past, really before last season, because Tennessee football finished last season so well and made a run there towards the Music City Bowl. It was really exciting. Some close football games down the stretch and some blowout wins over teams inside your division made it more exciting than it had been in years past. But you've typically, the last decade or so, have been able to look forward to basketball, especially when Rick Barnes got that thing going. You could not wait for basketball season, but this year you're going to have to balance it a little more because this Tennessee basketball team is going to be a good one. It's going to be a fun one to follow. But how can you think of basketball right now when you have a terrific 3-game stretch coming up after this bye week of Tennessee going to LSU? And just for the sake of this conversation, if Tennessee were to win that, which I do think Tennessee is the better team than LSU, but obviously you still have to go on the road and take care of business. That'll be a tall task. But if Tennessee can pull that one off, you're probably coming back to Neyland Stadium the following week for a top 5 matchup of 2 undefeated teams being Alabama and Tennessee. And we already know what that game means to so many people around the Tennessee fan base. So that's a fascinating one. And then Kentucky the following week. I think Tennessee-Kentucky, that game has really stepped up from a rivalry standpoint because of what Stoops has done the last couple of years with his football program. And I expect that to be another good football game, as it has been in the past couple of years. So hard to really turn the focus to basketball like we've been able to in years past when you have that type of 3-game stretch coming up.
Plenty of football to go, football recruiting, basketball now underway on the practice side, and be some baseball to keep up with as well. Ben McKee, GoVols247.com. You can read his work, his colleagues' work there as well. Ben, thank you for the time as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
My man.